Alright everybody, welcome to another episode, maybe 6. Yeah, episode 6 of the Mammoth Press arcade build. Today is actually pretty special. Instead of being downstairs, doing all the woodworking stuff, in fact, we've reached a point where I'm now painting it. So it's going to take another couple of coats. While it's drying, however, I was able to get my hands on this little dude. It's called a Raspberry Pi. This is the Pi4. Specifically. This is pretty much the meat and potatoes behind everything that is going to run on the arcade. It's going to have all the ROMs, it's going to have the emulators, anything and everything that we're going to be running on our display and playing is going to be on this little dude. Now, short version of the Raspberry Pi, this one being the Pi4 with 4 gigs of RAM, is it's a tiny computer, like a desktop computer motherboard. You can kind of see here. It's a credit card sized desktop computer, and it's got pretty much all the main features of your desktop typically, but much smaller. But it still packs a lot of cool stuff with it. So in this box is actually more than just the Raspberry Pi. By Canakit, this box, which I actually bought at Best Buy, comes with a handful of other things that I think were pretty useful. Actually, I should say necessary to run this thing properly and safely. So I got the Pro Kit. I think I got this at Best Buy for $99. Like with tax, it was like $108. And it comes with more than just the little motherboard, the actual Raspberry Pi 4 like module. It comes also with a 32 gigabyte SD flash card, which it's pretty much the hard drive of it. That's where all the files are going to be burned to and ripped to. It's got a power supply. It's got heat sinks that we'll actually have to install onto it. They're real simple. They're necessary. They are optional, but I feel that anything that helps dissipate heat on something, on any device, especially when it's going to be surrounded by other electronics, is useful. But it's real easy. I'll walk you through that. The instruction manual, an HDMI cable, because it does use HDMI. In fact, there's 2 HDMI ports, which we'll go over, and a USB drive that we can connect the SD card to into your computer to download and do all the programming and put all the emulators and the ROMs and stuff into effectively. And little thing that they added here recently is actually an external power switch, like a little button that you can switch to turn it on and off without having to like pull the plug on it, which is pretty handy. That's always good to have, especially when you can just do it without shutting down the entire power strip. But what we have here is a little unboxing video. Full disclosure, I've actually already opened it, but I just wanted to see what was in it. But the version that I have is the Raspberry Pi 4, as I said, that comes with 4 gigs of RAM. For a while, 1 gig, 2 gig, and 4 gigs were the options that we had. They just recently, within the last couple of weeks, released an 8 gig version. They teamed up with another group that figured out how to get the chipset to expand to 8 gigs, even though the board apparently is supposed to be able to handle like over 100. But if you're interested in the 8 gig, they just came out. They're kind of hard to find. I found one online, but it was on back order through Amazon even. And I could have waited an extra 3 days and then, basically a week and a half. But when I saw that this actual starter pack here was available for 100, because it was 150 online for the 8 gig. I just ran over there and grabbed it. And also the storage card that comes with this is 32 gig, but it uses any SD card that you want. So if you have one that's bigger, you can totally use it. I have a few others, but they're mostly used in cameras, so I couldn't really afford to use it. So I just got a little 32 gig. I figured it'll be big enough for now. But let's go ahead and open this thing up. I'll walk you through what's going on here. So pretty quickly in the box, we got basically the GPIO header quick reference. This is basically like a strip of pins that we will use it to power the fan that comes with it. There's a little fan that goes in the case. The case is also an extra item that's part of this kit. That's the only thing that I'm going to use it for, but there are other features that this thing can handle, most of which I won't really need and I won't go over, but that's the reference card for how you need that to go. The quick start guide tells you everything you need to know, including all the parts. In fact, I'm going to probably use this as reference as I walk you through the build itself, but I'll keep this off to the side here. But it also explains how we're going to go about putting the heat sinks on, which is pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, some warnings, you know, stuff like that. HDMI cord, because it uses HD. There's actually 2 HDMI ports on this available for like dual displays. They only give you one cable, but any HDMI, actually micro HDMI, a regular HDMI to a micro size cable is what specifically this uses. Any Raspberry Pi that you buy will require a power supply, which you would normally buy separately unless you bought it in a kit. It's just a USB-C power supply. You probably use any other USB-C, like for an Android phone. It's 5.1 volt, 3.5 amp. Sounds pretty standard, but they included that in the kit, and that's cool. Here is the USB drive that you plug the micro SD card into, and then plug it into your computer, and is what you use to get all the information on your desktop to program everything. And then we have the actual SD card, the 32. It's probably blank. We'll have to format it and then before installing anything. But I'll have a special episode for how to do all the software stuff. I'm actually kind of working out the bugs on ideas that I have already, but I'll walk you through that whenever we get to the software side of it. And then we have the little case, and these cases are important. They're like, let's see if we can open this up. The cases are pretty important because it houses the actual Raspberry Pi motherboard. It's almost like a desktop case. Keeps everything protected. It's pretty simple though, but it gives you access to everything like this, the USB-C, and then the HDMI ports there will be there. You know, power supply access, the SD card access. And then if we open it up, and something that we'll find in here, which is actually right here, it comes with a little mini fan, like a little PC fan, just like you would see, you know, on a desktop. A little tiny dude. And it'll pop right in there. I recommend if there's a fan supplied or any type of cooling measures supplied with any electronic, use it. I mean, nothing is more dangerous to electronics than heat. Next is dust, but dust typically creates heat, so it's, you know, kind of a double punch. But this fan is the fan I was talking about that will plug into that long strip. And I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, the Raspberry Pi fan, or the case, this one just came with this kit. I've seen this one used a lot. There's also other cases as well. There's another one that's like white. They come in all different shapes and sizes. Figure out how to get this thing back on. Ta-da! Okay. But I've seen some that were really cool. They were it was this very simple box just like this, only it was in the shape of an NES, and all of these access pieces here, like you flip up the lid, like the cartridge lid, and there's all access to it. I've seen a Super Nintendo one, I've seen the Sega Genesis one. I mean, there are cooler cases out there if you really want to customize, you know, and have like a more individualized case. This was going to be more than perfect for me, so I went with it. Keep that fan with it. Here is the power switch. Essentially, you plug this end into the Pi. I think you have the Pi run into it, and then this runs into, or your power supply into that, and then that into the Pi, and you can just hit this button to switch it on and off. And that keeps you from having to like hard reset or just pull the plug on it in order to shut it off, which apparently was a thing. And then here we have the heat sinks. There's 3 different sizes. These sizes are kind of equal to the size of the chips that they go on, and really these are just to keep those chips from getting too hot or dissipate heat off those chips while they're in use. And we'll actually go through how to go about doing that now. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this box, or at least toss it aside, like so. And then we'll open up this little dude. It's a Raspberry Pi 4 computer, Model B. 4 gigs of RAM. Oh wait, actually I could probably follow directions. Open here. All right, much easier. Okay, so just like it was promised, this is it. It's a tiny little dude, isn't it? And this is a whole desktop computer. Pretty wild. And it comes with its own little instructions. Safety precautions and whatnot. So, gives you a little picture card about how to go about reading the instructions. But I'll just go over this for now. So, this is it. This is, you know, the whole guts and everything about, you know, see if we get a good shot. There we go. This is the guts and everything about the Raspberry Pi. To start, let's go here. This might seem a bit familiar. Here we have basically the Ethernet port right here. That's your standard internet connection line. Your LAN cable goes in there. However, the Raspberry Pi 4, and I think the 3s do too, have a wireless feature, so you can actually connect to your wireless network, no problem. This is actually just an additional feature. Part of that wireless feature is also Bluetooth. You can connect Bluetooth devices to it as well, which is really handy for a lot of Bluetooth controllers. If you're not setting up an arcade machine like I am, and you just want something that you can run on your desktop computer and plug an Xbox controller into, you could totally do that. I mean, that's one way of doing it. But we're gonna use these USBs. See, we got two USB 2s. Or 3.0s and two 2.0s. Each of these on my system represents a player. Player 1, player 2, player 3, player 4, for example. And really what it is all the buttons and the joystick combinations are going to go into little motherboards like this. They're called USB controllers, so to speak. All the wiring will plug into them, and then they will have a USB cable that goes from them to one of these, and I'll have one for each player. And I'll explain that more whenever I get all the control board set up. But each of these will be basically the controls for each player. Let's see, over here we have a 3.5 millimeter audio port. I'll be using that to connect to the speakers that I showed you before. That like 2.1 that's with the subwoofer and the two speakers that I'll be mounting in. I'll be plugging into that. These two ports are the micro HDMI ports. There's one, display 1 and display 2. So you can do a dual display with this thing. This thing's got enough hardware power. See if we can get a better look at that. Yeah, 1 and 2 there. There are versions that feature 4K now. Which is pretty neat. I think the 8 gigabyte ones feature, or even actually Best Buy has a version of this one that has dual 4K display, which is pretty awesome. For those who really want like dual monitor 4K displays, because this thing, again, it's a computer. You know, not everybody uses this to play video games, but you know, it's a little much for what I needed, so I opted out, and it was, you know, significantly cheaper. And then here's the USB-C connector for the power supply. Alright, so this little dude is pretty neat. This is pretty interesting. So I'm not exactly sure what the onboard display capabilities are on this. I don't think there's like an onboard video card, like a video chip. And because I don't think this thing's prepared to do like accelerated graphics for the most part. I mean, it obviously uses it probably just uses the face RAM for its processing graphic power. However, if you did find yourself in a jam and needed like a heavy duty graphics card to run some like heavier next gen graphics, you could totally plug one into here. You can get a cable. You can get a cable to plug this into an external video card and run some pretty heavy duty stuff, which is impressive. And considering that this little chip here is actually the processor, it's a quad core 1.5 gigahertz quad core processor, which, I mean, it's pretty stout. I mean, I think my previous design laptop wasn't even this powerful. I think it was about a 2 gigahertz it was a 2 gigahertz dual core. So this is pretty stout in comparison, and that thing could run some pretty heavy duty stuff, you know, considering. I think this here is the RAM, the 4 gigs of RAM for this. Sorry, my shot's getting weird. So that's the 4 gigs of RAM. And then here, that's the gigabyte controller. I guess the wireless controller. And down here is the USB 3 controller. Oop, yeah, no, that's the gigabyte, and that's the USB 3 controller. These three things these 3 items is what we are going to use these guys on. These are heat sinks. Apparently these get pretty warm when they function for a while. So that's what we're going to end up putting them on, and it's pretty simple. See if we can put this down here. Let's see if I can zoom in on the shot a little bit so we can. Come on. Okay. All right. I have to excuse the shakiness. I'm kind of using a weird setup. You should actually see how I'm actually balancing this camera. Okay. So, opening this up, and it's pretty minimal for considering what's in there. But on the back of each of these is like a heatsink material, and there's a film on the outside. So, get in here, get this film off, maybe. There we go. The sticky surface underneath should drop straight onto where we need. In this case, just going by the shape, we're going to stick this right, yeah. Dunzos. Straighten it out a little bit. There we go. That should stick right there. That'll help dissipate heat off of there. Alright. So now, for this guy, we'll do the same thing. Just trying to peel this blue off. It's actually kind of a thin film that's on there. Rolls off pretty easy if you got fingernails. Alright, we'll, going with the shape and direction of it, we'll go with that. There. Just press down lightly, make sure it sticks. Awesome. Now this tiny little dude. Alright, actually went easier than I thought. So this little dude, according to the book, will actually go right, yeah. You just go with the shape of the chip, you know, make sure it lines up with the shape of the chip. So that one will stick on right there. And that's it. Like, that's, you know, heat sinks are on. These things will get a little warm. This will help dissipate the heat. But additionally, there's another little bit that will, here, let me zoom this out here so we can get a little bit more of a view. There we go. This little guy will now go into this case that I told you about. But specifically, there's going to be that fan that goes in this lid. So, let's break that guy out. Okay. So, going back to this card. The GPIO header pins are all right here. All like back here. And each of these pin setups will do different things. But it's important that you figure out which ones go the right way. So, in this case, this is saying that that's the ground for the 5 volt, and then there's a 3.5 volt or 3.3 volt. And what that means is that I can go with a lower power outage for slower speeds if I wanted to save power, and also it'll probably be quieter. But I think I'm actually going to go like the full power just to be safe, just to, you know, because I want this fan to work. If it gets too loud, then I'll just have to turn the machine up, or turn the sound up louder. But so what we're going to do is we're going to put, it shows here in the instructions to take the red, and it looks like the second pin pin 2 right. See if we can get a closer look at this. Right there. Pin 2. And then pin 3, which is actually, I take that back. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 is what this one's at. And then 5 is blank. And then 6 is right next to it. And that's the ground. We'll want that. We'll want that one right there. All right, so now we have power and a ground for the fan that goes on. And again, I can bring this power down to here if I wanted to go slower, but just in case, just for a little bit extra fan speed, I will want this to go at max speed for maximum coolage. And then we will situate this fan into its respective spot. And on this one, it looks like on this one, it actually snaps into place and holds itself. Others, it'll actually just snap in there. Others will have screws that you have to screw into, but this one's kind of neat. It actually pops itself in there. Okay, so now for my next trick, figuring out which way this goes in. Wait. Eureka. The whole thing comes off. It comes off in 3 pieces. Let's say I'm only going to force it. So, we'll just lightly place this in its base. Right. All right. Everything is good. So you can just set it right on its base. There's certain shapes to each of the components that match up perfectly, and you just make sure you line those up, and you can line them up. See, we're learning as we go, guys. Like, that's just how this works. Take this out and actually put it through here. It's like a puzzle. So we'll take the fan out, put it in its base, put the side case on around it, right? And then we can stick this where it belongs, right there. See, right in the lid, and then you can then attach the lid to the top. Well, probably the other way. Like so. And then you have the entire Raspberry Pi. You've got all your ports available. Got the micro SD card right there. You'll have your power supply, your HDMI, and your audio. So that's it, guys. That's the hardware of the Raspberry Pi 4. They're all pretty similar, I think. It's really just the hardware, the stats that are in them. You know, depending on your case, you may have to fumble around with it a little bit. This one was admittedly kind of a puzzle, but it wasn't hard to figure out. It made sense once it worked out. So I'm pretty pleased with it. But the next step is to program the SD card with all the games and the ROMs and the RetroPie that will be running all the games and everything. And as soon as I get all those details lined out, I'll definitely have an episode for it. So appreciate you watching, and let me know if you have any questions.